And we are live. Welcome, everyone. This is your host, Abraham L. Jaguar. A moment, please. Need to check something real quick. Mm-mm-mm. Yes, I knew it. I forgot to monetize. There we go. The stream is now monetized. All right. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So before we get started talking about the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, this channel is proudly sponsored by Durandal. Durandal is a tabletop role-playing game of mythic chivalry and legendary warriors in the time of Charlemagne's court. You will find it in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored by the Red Room Publishing. Please check out their store for for exclusive tabletop RPG products. They have recently released Savage Swords. Savage Swords is a Conan-inspired tabletop RPG where you explore ancient civilizations and confront forgotten nightmares. You will find it in their website. The link will be in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored by Dead Studios, the publishers and developers of Dames of Asstoria, a tabletop role-playing game where you play as monster girls, experiencing high adventure in a world that doesn't fully accept them. They have recently released Daughters of Lamb. This is a pay-what-you-want tabletop RPG where you play as cybernetic nuns with guns, looking for the missing pieces of their AI god. You will find it in their website. The links will be in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, let me show you this clip from one of the settings for the free Wretched role-playing game by Red Room Publishing. Mm-mm-mm. Sharing the screen, sharing the screen. Where is it? Ah, here it is. Definitely check it out if you like Oriental fantasy. Definitely look into it. All of the links will be in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, a moment, please, before we get started. This video was inspired by one of my friends and viewers, Josh, Full Metal Josh. He was asking about the Dark Souls tabletop role-playing game, and I'm going to show you the books, and we are going to get into the mechanics and whatnot. Mm, but let me see if he's available. Mm-mm. Before we get started, let's see. Mm-mm-mm-mm. I'm going to tell him I'm online. I'm online. Or I'm on the air. Sounds better, right? I'm on the air. I'm on the air. On the air. On the cloud. Okay, hopefully he will be available for this because he was curious about the Dark Souls tabletop role-playing game. But we shall start giving like a brief introduction. He has already heard about this. Steamforged. Let me look for uh, to make sure I get the complete name of the publisher. Yes, so Steamforged Games has somewhat of a mixed bag reputation When it comes to content creators, they like Steamforged games because they have so many popular IPs. They have Monster Hunter, they have Dark Souls, they have RuneScape, they have Resident Evil. So many IPs, right? Which makes me very suspicious as to their connections because they suck ass so much when it comes to the quality. They are infamous, both in board games and tabletop role playing games, for producing lackluster products. The first Dark Souls line of board games, the rulebook was an absolute mess. The rules themselves were flawed. And instead of properly fixing them, they just let them be. And the fans had to fix them. They had to come up with their own Dark Souls the board game rule set. Later on, they actually fixed this with the next printing of the Dark Souls board games, but I enjoy the new version of the Dark Souls board game. They have three separate starter packs at the time of this video, if I'm not mistaken. But each one of them, there is errata. At least the first two box sets, you need to download the errata because they are not capable, even though they have a huge team and budget, they are incapable of releasing a product without those errors. So now you need to download the errata. But that's not all. The second board game, the one, well, I don't know which one was first, but the board game with Nito on the cover, the Lord of Death, Nito. No, no, no. I don't remember if it's Painted World of Ariamis or the one with the with Nito on the cover, but they have the Pyromancer, if I remember correctly, the Pyromancer, right? Cool. Only one of those games has the Pyromancer. Perfect. But in the third board game, the most recent one, the one with the Citadel, let me look for the name. Mm-mm-mm. Dark Souls board game Citadel, Sunless City, the Sunless City. Okay, the Sunless City board game also includes the Pyromancer. So they are making you buy the Pyromancer twice. If you want to collect the different board games, you need to buy the Pyromancer twice. Fuck them. So they are, and let's go back to the Resident Evil board game, Resident Evil 2. By the way, let me check the sound. According to my settings. And let's go back to the Resident Evil. Okay, the sound is good. Okay, 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 okay. When it comes to the Resident Evil board game, in the second and the third board game, the tiles, they are so dark. I think they fixed things a bit in Resident Evil 3, but the tiles for Resident Evil 2, they are pretty bad. And in the newest version of Resident Evil, the one based on Resident Evil 1, I think they fixed some things. There were some criticisms, but I never looked into them. And that's just on the board game side. Let's go to Monster Hunter. And I need to give this information so that everyone is aware of what exactly we are dealing with here before we get into the Dark Souls tabletop RPG. When it comes to Monster Hunter, the ones that wrote that board game, they are so ignorant on the lore that they get so many facts incorrect about the monsters. And the gameplay is a bit lackluster. It is decent, I would say, but based on what I have seen, the playthroughs, the opinions of others, yes, there are some things that need to be fixed. I would still think it's a good board game, but Steamforged, with all of that budget, with those IPs, you would think that they would polish their games. Now let's go to the board games, the tabletop RPG side. RuneScape, the tabletop role-playing game of RuneScape. So many errors once again. There is talk of AI art. I would understand it. They have said that they use AI art in RuneScape and in Dark Souls. I haven't fully verified if that is correct. I own the books for Dark Souls, but if they used AI art, it is very well hidden. But as I understand it, they used AI art in the RuneScape board game. Again, big budget company. If that is true, what is wrong with them, right? But putting aside that, let's say that they don't have AI art. So many errors in the RuneScape tabletop RPG. And now we get to Dark Souls. We get to Dark Souls. The Dark Souls tabletop RPG. When it was first released, it was abysmal. Everything, just everything. Let me make a small pause to check and see if Josh is available because he is going to want to hear this. Full Metal Josh. Like I said, he inspired this. Oh, I don't think he's available. Oh, well, I guess he'll watch the video some other time. Okay. So, the Dark Souls tabletop RPG. First printing. Who knows how many dozens of critical errors concerning the weapons that could be used by the different character classes, concerning battle, concerning position, concerning the saving throws. Many of the things were direct copy and paste from the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition player's handbook and the monster manual. So lazy. You're getting paid who knows how much, and you do that. They have the paladin instead of the knight. There are so many references to classes of Dungeons and Dragons that do not appear in Dark Souls. Copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. Later on, after several months, a year if I'm not mistaken, a year or at least more than 6 months passed by. They were generous enough to correct those things, but still, even in the new edition, they left so many things, not as many, but still a significant amount of things copy pasted. Let me look for Artorias. Artorias. I don't remember if Artorias is in this monster book, Artorias the Abyss Walker, or I think it's in the core book. Let me go through it. Artorias, Artorias, Artorias. We're going to the bosses section. Artorias, where are you, Artorias? And I will mention some positive things about this tabletop RPG. Don't worry about it. It is worth owning it with a few caveats. Okay, okay, okay. Here we go. Sir Artorias, the Abyss Walker, one of the most famous, if not perhaps the most famous of the Dark Souls enemies, antagonists. Let me get that into focus. Careful now. You see, Artorias? Artorias, right? Okay, Artorias. We take a look at his stats. Okay, fine, right? Fine enough, fine enough. Now, we take a look. Excuse me. Let's put this over here. At the Monster Manual. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition Monster Manual. Let's go and take a look at the Marilith. Marilith, where is it? Go to the index to see where the Marilith is. Marilith, page 61. Page 61. Marilith. Armor class of Artorias. 18. 18 armor class. Armor class of the Marilith. 18. Strength of Artorias. 18. Strength of the Marilith. 18. Dexterity of Artorias. 16. Ah, they did change some things. So it's a different monster. There is another monster, or maybe they just made a few minor modifications. But Artorias, it has so many. Ah, it's not the Marilith. It's not the Marilith. It's the Erinis. Erinis. It's this one, Erinis. The Erinis on page 73. Dexterity 16, just like Artorias. Artorias, Constitution 18, Intelligence 14. Erinis, Constitution 18, Intelligence 14. Artorias is a complete copy of the Erinis. And that's extremely disappointing. So those are the things you can expect, not only from the previous abysmal version of the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, but also from the newest, revised, corrected edition. And that's very disappointing, right? But let's go deeper into things. First, Josh, welcome. Welcome, Josh. Oh, when I finish this live stream, please take a look at the things I spoke before, because I already talked a bit about many nuances concerning Steamforged, but like a small summary, Steamforged is pretty pathetic in quality, despite having those expensive IPs. And the Dark Souls tabletop role-playing game, when it came out, it had so many copy paste, copy paste, copy paste of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition to the point that they inserted words such as paladin. There is no paladin in Dark Souls. They were copy pasting things from the Dungeons and Dragons player's handbook. Apart from that, many errors concerning combat, the many mechanics broken completely. So they had, after 6 or more months, I think between 6 and 1 year, they released, like they said, the revised version. But I was just saying, Artorias, the Abyss Walker, has the same stats as the Erenis, exactly the same, completely the same, with just a few, how you say, rewarded attacks. For example, Artorias. Let's go back to the Abyss Walker Artorias. Artorias. La, la, la. What page are you in, Artorias? I am terrible how they continue to drop the ball on products. Because they don't care. They have huge staff and huge budget. Don't care. Artorias, What? Artorias, the Abyss Walker, where are you? There we go. In case you haven't seen it, the image for Artorias. Here's Artorias. Artorias, okay. Let's look at one of his special attacks. Abyss Hunter. Artorias gains advantage on all attack rolls when targeting demons, monstrosities, and any creatures of the abyss. Okay, that's great, right? Let's look at the Erenis. Erenis, page 61. As I have said, the attributes for the Erenis, the stats, strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, etc. Ah, no, it's over here. Page 73. They are the same for Artorias. And she has the same attack values. Plus 8 to hit. Damage 1d8 plus 3 piercing. Let's take a look at that. Plus 8 to hit. Oh, they did change the damage at least. Ah, no, no, no. 1d8 plus 3 piercing. So, Artorias, how pathetic can you get? How pathetic can you get when you are a tabletop RPG designer and you have been paid who knows how much for one of the most expensive IPs in video games, and you copy paste everything. Let's take a look at the idiot who did this. That is crazy. Yes, let's say their names. And the idiots that did this, these lazy ass fuckers, Richard August and Matt Hart. Richard August and Matt Hart. Development editing by Alan Barr. I wouldn't expect that from Alan. How do you pin this? Oh, there we go. I wouldn't expect that from Alan Barr because he has been producing some good things for OSR. So if it's the same Alan Barr, what the hell, right? Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you check the stats? Why you're getting paid? You're getting paid to do this. Why won't you do? So yes, some horrible things. But now he's the Tiny Dungeons guy. Exactly, Tiny Dungeons guy. What the fuck? Why don't you do your job of taking a look at these errors? They actually released this, the first printing, and it was atrocious. They had to send books to everybody. Imagine how much money it costs the company for that, because of that. And the players that were so enthusiastic about running Dark Souls, they purchase Dark Souls and they get their group together and they're about to run it, and the game is broken. So yeah, the first printing, abysmal, terrible, disgusting. Wow. But I will say some positive things about the newest printing, despite it still has errors. Like I said, many of the monsters are copy paste, carbon copy versions of what a letdown exactly of the Dungeons and Dragons monsters. But now let's take a closer look at the product so far. And like I said, avoid Tome of Journeys. That's the most recent book. Tome of Journeys allows you to play Dark Souls 1, and as I understand it, some elements of Dark Souls 2, because the Dark Souls tabletop role-playing game is mostly focused on Dark Souls 3. That's another criticism. A lot of people got it because they wanted to play Dark Souls 1. They wanted to run a Dark Souls 1 tabletop RPG session, but almost all of the material completely focused on Dark Souls 3. Not even like they have the things about the embers, not so much on the chosen undead, etc. Chosen undead is from Demon Souls. Well, many of the I don't remember, but many of the story details of Dark Souls 1 and 2, they don't appear in the Dark Souls tabletop RPG core book. Did you want to run Dark Souls 1 and 2? Tough luck. This is Dark Souls 3. So it always puzzled me. I guess they did it because Dark Souls 3 was so popular. And they said, well, a lot of people don't know about Dark Souls 1 and 2, so we are going to focus it on 3. The first product that I will analyze, the Game Master screen. It comes with a booklet, and I will talk about the booklet in a few moments. The screen is really good quality-wise, in structural sturdiness. 3 panels. Mm-mm-mm. You can bend them. Of course. Let me see if I can show you the image. Like a little graveyard scene. But the contents, let me show you the contents. Okay, you won't be able to see them all, of course, and not as clear. But just to give you an idea, right? Just like a general idea on how things are. In this game, position plays a major part. Position, we'll talk about position, which is a combination of stamina and hit points, and even you could say mana. But position is also a resource to activate many of your abilities and powers. Instead of including the values, the cost in position for the various powers and abilities here in the screen, here, instead of that, they include this fucking table. Take a look at how much space it takes. This table is used when a character gets killed. When your character dies, you make a roll on this table, and you could end up with a penalty or a bonus for your next, as when you revive, because in Dark Souls the characters are immortal. Although curiously enough, if you roll a one on this table, your character dies for good, so long, which I don't like. I don't like that result. In Dark Souls, the protagonists never die, never. They are chosen. They are the chosen undead. They are the kindled. They are beings of destiny. So why include a result of your character permanently dying? Death is already a penalty enough. In Dark Souls, death is already terrible enough. Okay, so yeah, and this table, your characters are not going to constantly die. Unlike the video game, you have a lot more control because in the Dark Souls video game, you rely a lot on your ability using your controller, your keyboard, etc. But because this is a tabletop RPG, you won't be dying as much because you describe your actions and they happen accordingly. Let's say this is a good comment from Full Metal Josh. Wait, what? Crazy waste of space and poor choice for extinguishing a character's flame. It is Dark Souls, exactly. It is Dark Souls. Why would you include permadeath in Dark Souls? I know, I know. Instead of including this table for when the character revives, why not include the cost in position for all of the different standard combat maneuvers that you can do? So yeah, in the game master screen, lackluster. It's sturdy. It looks good. It looks good, undoubtedly. Perhaps because of the camera, you can't appreciate the details, but this looks excellent, excellent on the table. And you could say that half of the information is good, half of the information, but the entire panel for the table, what the fuck? Roger speaks. Even I know. Let's show it. Let's show it. Even I know any Dark Souls RPG shouldn't include permadeath. Yes, exactly. So the game master screen, sadly enough, not that good. Not that good. Now let's take a look at the book that is included with the game master screen. The What Remains in the Fire Dark Souls Adventure. What Remains in the Fire Dark Souls Adventure. This adventure, I won't be spoiling things, but I can tell you the illustrations. They are very good. The graphic design and layout, when it comes to the graphic design and layout, top notch. I would say top notch. The illustrations, look, very Dark Souls. And because of the camera, yes, because it's so dark you can't see it properly. But the art, the graphic design, the layout, the font, everything is good, really good. But now let's talk about the bad things about before we get into the meat of the scenario. The scenario constantly mentions pre-generated characters that are included in this book. They are not included in the book. They are not. They are nowhere to be seen. Later on, they added those to the Steamforged Games official website. So you need to go to the website and download the pre-generated characters if you want to use them. Okay, fine enough. There are some typos, as I remember, some errors as well. Yeah, I know, Josh, I know exactly. And now let's talk about the scenario, which is a mixed bag because there is something really good and something really bad. In fact, let's talk about it has to do with the balance of the game. Dark Souls, of course, is not exactly balanced. An exceptional Dark Souls player can take on challenges that others could only dream of. If you have like perfect knowledge of the enemy attacks, the patterns, when to roll, when to attack, if you need to block, etc. Oh, let's see. Comment by Roger. This is going to be good. Already, I get the feeling whoever was responsible for putting together the Dark Souls RPG never played the video game or had any insight into what that world should be like. And that's what I mentioned at the start of this video, Roger. It connects. That is what you're saying connects with something that I mentioned when it comes to the Monster Hunter board game produced by Steam Forged Games as well. In the Monster Hunter board game, the one who wrote the lore, the details on the monsters, has no clue about the monsters. He just like looked online, and or maybe they gave him some design documents. But many of the Monster Hunter aficionados, the fans, they point out, hey, this monster that's not true. That this is not true about that monster. So see, he doesn't have any idea of what he's talking about. So Roger, that could be it. It could be that the designers of this Dark Souls tabletop RPG didn't have a clue about Dark Souls at all. Maybe they didn't even play it. Maybe they just like played it briefly, but that could be it. Now, going back to the scenario, the balance. There are some enemies here. Only if you roleplay, as I always say, roleplay solves everything. Only if you describe your actions and reactions will you stand a chance of defeating some of the creatures in this starting scenario. I would recommend that you run for it. Still, in the Dark Souls video games, you encounter these monsters at the very start that usually kill you, like the Asylum Demon. Some people can beat it, some others, they get destroyed by it. But in this starting scenario, they include monsters that are even more powerful than that demon. I would recommend that if you run the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, you run it as a separate thing. Do not try to recreate the Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3 experience because the monsters here, for example, and you saw me defeat that boss, Josh. The judge, the name is Gunir. Let me show you the image. Judex. Judex Gundir. Here we go. Oop, this book is heavy. Judex Gundir. Judex Gundir. The first boss in Dark Souls 3. The first boss. Take a guess as to his challenge rating. Take a guess. Oh, yes, I remember exactly, Josh. Take a guess about his challenge rating, considering he's the first boss. The easiest boss in the game, I would say. Could it be two? No, right? That's too low. Three or four, right? Five. Let's say it's five. 5, the challenge rating for a first boss that you fight. Challenge rating 5, right? Now, Udex Gundyr, challenge rating 9. 9. They want first level characters to face a challenge rating 9 boss, first level against 9 in Dungeons and Dragons. Remember, this Dark Souls tabletop RPG, what is the challenge rating scale? It's Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, Roger. This Dark Souls tabletop RPG is for the most part Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, mechanically speaking. So we start really bad off the bat, and I bet that Udex Gundyr stats, the powers, the abilities are copy paste from another monster from the Dungeons and Dragons monster manual. So they just copy pasted. Oh, that's his challenge rating. Who knows? And Roger, this makes sense with what you said. Someone that has played Dark Souls 3 to the first boss, until the point of the first boss, knows that Judex Gundyr, there is no way in hell he is challenge rating 9. At most, he's 5. At most. So yes, Roger, I think you are correct. The imbeciles, I'm going to so they want you to die more than in the game and make it extra grindy, exactly. So I'm repeating the names of these imbeciles again: Richard August, Matt Hart, and the editor, development editor, Alan Barr from Tiny Dungeons. Alan Barr, fuck you. Why the fuck are you giving this to people? You're getting paid to give them a good Dark Souls experience, not just copy paste things from Dungeons and Dragons. Fuck. So yeah, back to the scenario. This starting scenario has some really unbalanced encounters. In a lot of them, you're going to have to run. Very little souls to be obtained. And then they introduce an antagonist. The introduction for that antagonist is pretty, I would say, exquisite. That's the good thing about this starting scenario. The antagonist is really good, but at the same time, he breaks all of the Dark Souls lore horribly. You have to rework the setting so much. I'm out of the loop as far as the challenge ratings go, but what is that comparable to like a dragon? Ah, that's a good idea. Let me take a look at the monster manual. For example, let's go to the red dragon. Mm-mm. Well, the gold dragon, right? It is almost as strong as a young gold dragon. Challenge rating 10. Almost as strong. So you want a group of first player characters to face a young gold dragon, almost. Not even a wormling, that would be a more sensible choice. Exactly, crazy. Crazy, crazy. So back to the scenario. The antagonist, the introduction, beautiful, but he breaks the lore completely. And once you get to the end of the scenario, I think that the the resolution for the scenario is again a mixed bag because it takes the players into a very, very strict arc, a very strict adventure arc. Unlike Dark Souls, you go wherever you want. Sometimes you can go into areas that are beyond your level. That's perfectly fine. But there is a certain railroady aspect to things. But despite that, the way the scenario is handled and the brilliant introduction of the antagonist, just because of that, I actually like this scenario. But you need to tweak it. You need to tweak it, and I would tell the players from the start, The encounters are run if you need to run. They may have they may end up running all the time. Run when you encounter some situations there because yes, and that is without even counting. Let me take a look. Roger says an armored warrior as difficult as a young gold dragon. What the actual fuck? Exactly, exactly. Mm-mm-mm. All right. Let me look at the stats of the antagonist. Chamber of. He summons a what? Oh no! Yes! No, no, no. No, no, no. Listen to this. Listen to this. Listen. Did you think? Did you think that Udex Gundyr was bad? Did you think that was unbalanced? Okay, I'm going to wait a bit. Josh, Roger, in challenge rating, giving a number between 1 to 20, what do you think is the challenge rating for the boss in this scenario? Say a number, any number, from 1 to 20. First player characters against a certain challenge rating. What do you think the number is? Any number? Roger, 15. 15. The challenge rating for the boss in this scenario for first level characters, and you have to defeat the boss. Here it says when they defeat the boss is 16. 16 challenge rating. I kid you not. I kid you not. I have to show it to you. 16 challenge 16. 16. 16. I am not joking. 16. First level characters against a challenge rating 16 opponent. I mean, do you want to put it in dragon terms? Let's take a look at what I was close. Exactly, Roger. You were pretty close. That's the equivalent of an adult brass dragon. Imagine putting the player characters in an inescapable situation. They cannot escape that part of the scenario. They have to defeat the boss. How in the fuck, how in the hell do they expect them to beat a 16 level opponent being first level? So the scenario, you have to tweak so many things. I guess you're practically unstoppable after the first module. That makes little sense. They cannot, there is no way absolutely, even if they roleplay like the best, you cannot defeat a level 16 opponent. So when you run this scenario, because like I said, this boss, it's obligatory. It's obligatory for the player characters to defeat this boss because of something that happens in the scenario. The first scenario is meant to last for a year. Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. They need to level up all the way to 60. So you can run the scenario, but you need to modify everything when it comes to those inconsistencies, right? Now let's take a look at the core book. What do you get for defeating the boss? Oh, I don't want to spoil things, but the amount of souls obtained, exactly, Roger. The amount of souls obtained. Let's take a look at the amount of souls. 15,000 souls. That is enough to get you to. Let's take a look at the level up chart. Level up, level up. To get you almost halfway through to level 7. So that scenario, uh, if by some miracle, and that miracle will never happen, If by some miracle the first level characters defeat a challenge rating 16 enemy, they get to level 7 with just that scenario. It's absolutely ridiculous. There are many things that you have to change if you plan to run the included scenario of the game master screen. Guess that is a one-shot campaign, a new first, a one-shot campaign exactly. No, no. Imagine going full crazy, like, well, we are playing this until you get to level at least 14 to defeat the boss. But now, moving on to the core book. The core book, super thick. In total, how many pages in total? Three, 380 pages. Thick book. Just keep fighting the same enemies and zones exactly like that guy who leveled up Cloud in Final Fantasy VII in the old Final Fantasy VII. That if you stay in the starting area when you're first starting the game, a guy actually went and fought the same enemies over and over. It took him who knows how many months, like a year or more, but he actually got to level 99 just to see if it was possible to get to level 9 to the maximum level by defeating the same enemies over and over again, the weak ones. They want you to run that scenario like that. Yeah, there's a video about that. That's very funny. So in the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, like I said, this is Dark Souls 3. This is not Dark Souls 1, this is not Dark Souls 2. And Roger says, from 1 to level 7 against that boss, I could only imagine what the major campaign end boss would be like. And that is correct because there are some enemies here of challenge rating 23. Like, let's go to one of the most powerful Dark Souls enemies. Where is he? Ah, yes, it's this. Okay, you have to fight three of that boss at the same time. Yeah, yes, that's um, Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. Let me show you the image. Aldrich. Aldrich, Devourer of Gods. Very abstract representation of him, but one of the most powerful Dark Souls monsters. He is challenge rating 30. Challenge rating 30. You need a full group of level 20 characters with the best, the most powerful items in existence, and they need a miracle. So this is the sort of power level that we are dealing with here. I think there's actually one that is more powerful. I'm not sure. Let me. Is it he a giant or is it in the other book? Let me take a look. Mm-mm-mm. Bosses, bosses, bosses. Slave Knight Gale, which is, as I understand it, the last boss in the Dark Souls saga. Sounds like teenagers made this game. Exactly, exactly. uh, where's the? Mm, well, if I remember correctly, there is also a giant that is even more powerful. Challenge rating 23. What's the point of even being in the same area as that thing? You'd blink and the battle would be over. And yeah, like I said, when it comes to Aldrich, it's challenge rating 30. No, 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 not challenge rating 12. He's actually challenge rating 40. Yes, let's see if I can find him. Uh, um, he's like a giant. Here's Yorm the giant. He's challenge rating 30, but there is another one. I'm sure I saw him. Artorias, the Nameless King, the King of Star. No, still, it's this the Soul of Cinder. Challenge rating 30 as well. Soul of Cinder, challenge rating 30. 30. So there are some crazy powerful enemies here that only in your wildest dreams, with perhaps at least 6 characters of level 20 with the best gear available. Even if you don't have an entire group, perhaps have the help of non-player characters. Maybe one of the powerful beings that are good in Dark Souls, that are very few, but that are good. Maybe they come and assist you, right? But yes, that's the sort of enemies that are included here. But now let's talk a bit more about the positives. The book is absolutely gorgeous. The illustrations, they are very good. The graphic design as well. I've seen some cheesy stuff, but that Dark Souls game is the entire dairy farm. I agree. I agree. But there are some things between the artwork is great. Uh-huh. There are some salvageable things. And just take a look at, let me see, Anor Londo. Oh, my hair is getting stuck in my fingers. Ah, there goes a hair. Okay. Anor Londo in the night. So atmospheric, right? So moody, so mysterious. Everything concerning graphic design, font, layout. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And when it comes to the lore, they actually didn't mess up the lore. At least if they messed up something, it's in the minority because I haven't seen some discrepancies, ambiguities beyond the usual Dark Souls stuff. As a Dark Souls fan, if you want to know about that monster, that um, place, this is pretty much a lore book. The roleplay explanations are terrible. Are You feel bad for the roleplay explanations in this game. What is a role-playing game? As with the original Dark Souls video games, a tabletop role-playing game involves a player taking on the part of an individual character, guiding them through a fictional world. Okay. As they do so, their characters will grow and improve, blah blah blah. hmm Where a tabletop role-playing game differs from a video game is in the other players around the table. So the only difference, our artwork is great and all, but if you wrap a poop in gold foil, it's still poop. They think that the only difference between a tabletop role-playing game and a video game is that you play tabletop RPGs with people at a table. How about starting? So many how-to roleplay sections are horrendous. I know, I know, I know. How about saying the difference between a tabletop role-playing game and a video game is that in a tabletop RPG, you describe your actions and reactions within the game world. You describe your actions and reactions. There is no controller. So it's not the people that is the different thing. It's start with the descriptions with the game that the way that the game is played. Let's move on. Mm, 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 mm. Let's see, let's see, let's see. I can't find it in this particular paragraph, but later on, I think it is mentioned in the book that you are telling stories. With this tabletop RPG, you are telling stories about Dark Souls. That would be a bit lame, don't you think? Let's tell stories about Dark Souls. Once upon a time, there was a new soul that emerged in the world of Dark Souls. His name was Frederick. And Frederick went on a journey, on a quest. Frederick fought many dangerous opponents, and he died, but he came back from the dead again, and he obtained souls, and then he leveled up. That's telling stories about Dark Souls, okay? That is telling stories. That is telling a story. Dark Souls, the fairy tale game, exactly, exactly. Dark Souls, the fairy tale game. So why the fuck do they keep on doing this, taking tabletop RPGs and telling people that they are telling stories? You're not telling stories. It's like I always say, you are not telling stories about your characters. You're experiencing the game world as your characters. Tabletop role playing game. Playing a game and playing a role. Playing a game and playing a role. You're not telling stories. So I think what Roger says applies also to tabletop RPGs. I think that the authors have never role played in their entire lives, have never played a role in a tabletop RPG. So they haven't played Dark Souls, or maybe they played it for 5 minutes just to get like a grasp on the mechanics. Never made it to the first boss because if they actually fought Udex Gundyr, they wouldn't have given him a challenge rating of 9. They would have given him at most, and this is like 5 at most, and that's still pretty high. I would perhaps make it so that it was challenge rating 4, probably 4 or 5. Moving on, roleplay explanations terrible. Then we have character generation, and here I start to like it quite a bit. You have 4 archetypes. You belong to the unkindled. You randomly generate the backstories, the memories, the drives. Fair enough. And the origins are the brute. Each origin comes with a value of position. Position, like I said, is a combination of stamina, hit points, and even like magical power. You have bloodied effects during combat when you are reduced to 50% or less of your position, which is could be considered like the hit points. You have some effects that trigger. In the case of the brute, you may add an additional +3 to armor class. You gain advantage on all strength related checks and saving throws. You reduce all the damage that you take by 2 points. Now, this doesn't happen in Dark Souls in the video games, but I think it's a good representation of the player. Like you have seen me fighting in Dark Souls, fighting for my life, desperate. That's when we're about to die, we suddenly like give that extra oomph to save ourselves. We start to play a little bit better when we're about to die. So I think it's a good representation of that. The archetypes, like I said, are the brute that is more melee oriented. We also have the fencer, which is more dexterous. If you want to play a thief, an assassin, that's the archetype for you. Or how do they call them here? They call them the origin for you. In the case of the jack of all trades, that's for someone that just wants to go all routes, like the deprived, be good at almost everything, right? But decent, but master of none. Let's say Roger speaks. Dark Souls isn't supposed to be a graphic novel. It's supposed to be fighting for your life against. Let me put it on the screen. fighting for your life against nearly impossible odds, and getting your tail kicked so you're forced to adjust and fight differently. And once again, it shows that the writers for this game, they did not understand Dark Souls. Then we have the caster, and the origin is pretty self-explanatory. If you want to play as a caster, choose the caster origin. This is not to say that you are forced to sticking to an origin. If you want to play, let's say, the warrior, you can play the warrior as a brute, which would be optimal in my opinion, or you can play him as the fencer to be a bit more dexterous. For example, the bloody effect for the fencer. You may add +2 to your dexterity. You can make one additional reaction on your turn. You reduce all melee weapon position spend costs by 1. So there is a bit of customization, and that is good. That is good. Not as much as you would like. A lot of people actually criticize the Dark Souls tabletop RPG because they said in Dark Souls, even though you have classes, you can customize everything about those classes as you level up. If you start out as a warrior, you could start to level up the spell related stats and you end up with a warrior caster. But here you are a bit more restricted. Basically, if you want to do that, you might as well choose Jack of all trades and deprived. When it comes to classes, the classes are the knight, the mercenary, the assassin, the warrior, the thief, the herald, the cleric, the sorcerer, the pyromancer, and the deprived. Now, these classes are a mishmash of Dungeons and Dragons classes with Dark Souls classes. The mercenary is pretty much the ranger with some Dark Souls modifications. The knight is the paladin with some Dark Souls modifications. The warrior is the barbarian with some Dark Souls modifications. But I would say that those modifications are still enough so that they feel significantly different. They are not going to be completely different, but different enough. For example, let's take a look at the barbarian in the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition player's handbook. Ah, where's the player's handbook? Ah, here it is. Player's handbook. Barbarian. Mm-mm-mm. Barbarian. Your maximum attack. Primal champion, level 20, primal champion. At 20th level, you embody the power of the wilds. Your strength and constitution scores increase by 4. Your maximum for those scores is now 24. Let's go to the warrior. The warrior. Mm-mm-mm. Warrior, warrior, warrior. Where art thou, warrior? Mm-mm-mm. Here he is. Level 20. Unkindled strength. At 20th level, you are the epitome of the warrior, the epitome of the north. Your strength and constitution score, your strength and constitution scores increase by 5, and your maximum for those scores is now 25. So it's the same as the barbarian, almost the same. But then you have other things that are not as barbarian like. You have the protector. At 13th level, if a friendly creature is knocked prone or becomes bloodied, you may spend 2 positions to immediately move adjacent to them, provided they are within 20 feet. You have advantage on all saving throws made while standing adjacent to the prone or bloodied friendly creature you seek to defend. As you seek to defend them. Again, beautiful artwork, but that alone isn't going to give your game longevity or replayability. Exactly, exactly. Let's take a look at the barbarian class because I do not identify any similar talent to that other ability, a similar power ability, the barbarian. Aha, barbarian, where are you? Where are you, barbarian? Here you are. Aha, no. So as you can see, you still have some things that do not appear in the player's handbook. The barbarian, the warrior could be considered a heavily modified barbarian, just like the knight could be considered a heavily modified paladin, but they still feel like Dungeons and Dragons classes. The coolest addition, perhaps in terms of versatility and customization, would be the deprived. Let's take a look at the deprived. Everybody loves or hates the deprived. The deprived. Here he is. Up. Here is the deprived. You have seen him plenty of times in the Dark Souls video games. The deprived pretty much is a clean slate for you to choose powers from all of the other classes. So you could take some powers from the warrior, some powers from the pyromancer, some powers from the assassin. So if you want like a build your own class type of character class, the deprived is for you. So in that regard, I really like the classes, even though I know they are supposed to be. He can solo the first scenario. Yeah, right. The deprived can solo everything. Even though the classes are heavily based on the typical Dungeons and Dragons classes, I still like them because of those unique things. The attributes remain almost the same, and here is something that I don't like: Souls experience and leveling up. When you kill enemies, the souls come to you, right? Okay, perfect. And if you get killed, um, if half of the group is killed, as I understand it, half of the group or more than half, I have yet to find this. Let's say you have four characters, and if two of those characters get killed in the battle, everybody dies. Everybody dies. I'm sorry, everybody dies. What do you think about that? Imagine you're having this fight against Jodix Gundyr. You're about to beat Jodix Gundyr. He just needs like one hit, and Jodix Gundyr kills two characters in one swing. Boom. But two characters are alive, right? Two characters are alive. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, no, no. It says in the rules that if two characters, if the half of the group dies, they all die. Don't you find that very exciting in Dark Souls? When only exactly infuriating difficulty. When only you have one single character against the boss, you are the player hosting the game, and you have your three ghost allies, and you're fighting the boss, and they kill one of the ghost allies, and they kill another one. Oh no, only two of the characters remain, and the two of you manage to complete the task. This against all odds. Doesn't that feel so incredible? So why steal that from the players in the tabletop RPG? If I run this, I am not using that rule. If there is a single character left alive and he manages to score the last blow, perfect, right? Laziness. Yeah, it sounds like laziness. It sounds lazy. And that's not all. There's something that I understand why they did it, but I think players are going to be constantly doing that. The bonfires serve as banks for souls. If you have souls, how can we make it harder without coming up with good content? Exactly, exactly. The bonfires serve to store your souls. If you have, let's say, 2,000 souls, and you don't want the enemies to kill you because when you die, you lose your souls. That's the thing about this game. If you die, your souls are lost. Not even like in Dark Souls that you recover them, right? Let me take a look again at death. Death, death, death. No death. Character death. Character death. 85. Character death. Page 85. Do, 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 do. Page 85. Character deaths and bonfires. When a player character is reduced to zero position, they are dead. In the world of Dark Souls, the role playing game, however, this is not the end. Instead, the player character will reawaken sometime later at the site of the last bonfire, of course. When a player character dies, they lose all their collected souls, but when they awaken, are restored to full base position and all their abilities are once again ready to use. But you can't recover the souls. And look, if more than half of a party of player characters are killed, they have failed. Instead, the player character will reawaken sometime later at the nearest bonfire to where they died. If more than half of the party of player characters. So again, you have five players. This RPG obviously had zero input. Ah, no, it's this RPG obviously had zero input from the people that crafted the video game. And Josh, just don't roll a one. Everyone you know dies. Exactly. For those that just arrived, there is a table here that you roll on the table, and depending on the results, you may end up with some bonuses or penalties when you go back from the realm of the dead. You may end up with a penalty to an attribute, a permanent penalty, or even a permanent bonus if you are lucky. You may end up with even some weird powers. There is a result that you basically grow like a carapace or bony structure around your body, like you have this crusty cover, and that's to your armor class. Oh man, that would make it exciting to dive back in and try to get the souls. Aha, you know, like the game. And that's where the game this differs quite a bit because here, if you lose your souls, they are gone for good. But the bonfires serve as banks. You can go to the bonfire and you can store your souls. You could think, oh no, I have 2,000 souls. I don't want to lose them when I get killed. Just, you know, like the game. So you bank those souls, you go to the bonfire and you bank 2,000 souls and they are safe. The soul bank keeps your soul safe. So I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know if, for example, if I were to run a Dark Souls game, if I were to allow storing the souls or allow for the recovery of the souls. I think that is more thematic. I think that is better. When they die, the souls remain in that particular area zone where they died. And once the players reach that same area, they recover the souls. No bank needed. Why did they add the soul banking? Exactly, Josh. Like the game, like the game. Why don't they? It's so easy. They just need to go back to the same spot, and now they have the souls. If they get killed before returning to that spot, then they lose the souls. Moving on. Now let's talk about the. If anything, this just makes me want to play the video game. I agree. I agree. But like I said, there are still some positive things. The classes, despite like I said, being similar to Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, they still have some different things, some powers and abilities like that. The warrior being a bit more defensive, unlike the barbarian. You have to backtrack either way to the flame or your death side. You either go to the flame or your death side. Well, when you revive in the flame, you can immediately recover your souls. in a way, it makes it easier but less thematic. I would instead no, but it's the same, right? Because let's say you have 2,000 souls. You decided to take on the boss with your 2,000 souls. You get killed. The souls are lost, gone forever in this tabletop RPG. But nobody is going to do that. Everybody is going to bank them. If I run this one, I am going to make it so that the souls are lost, but you can still recover them if you go back to the place where you lost them, like in the video game. Let's talk about the most controversial point: position. Position represents a combination of your health, stamina, and resources, magic, like typical, like magic, mana. When you are out of position, you are dead. At the start of each combat encounter, you obtain a number of position points. You have your base position points, let's say position 13, but you start the fight and you make a roll according to your origin or other effects, and you have, let's say, +5 position to add, and you start the fight with 18 position. The position is pretty much the hit points in the Dark Souls tabletop RPG. But at the same time, the position is used to activate many powers and abilities and maneuvers. You can spend the position on yourself to increase the result of a die roll by +1 per position point spent. You can increase your melee or ranged attack damage roll by 5 points as a minimum. It should be as a maximum, no? No, as a minimum because it's on a one-by-one basis. Okay, and you can increase your movement. You can gain +5 feet of movement per position spent. Those are like the standard ways of using your position. It's a currency. Let me pin this comment because this is good. And here is the thing that this position is supposed to represent. In Dark Souls, you are moving, rolling, dodging, you are uh, parrying, attacking. So the position is supposed to be representing all of that in an abstract way. But here's the problem that is still workable, that is still enjoyable. And to power some spells and abilities, for example, some weapons have the feature of spend 5 position to roll an extra d6 for damage or things like that. And here is where the people that do not know how to roleplay, they face this problem. They couldn't understand how to run this game because they said, but if the position is also your hit points, then you won't be spending your position to use your powers. You would be fighting normally without spending position because you're afraid of your position running out and you die when you reach 0 position. So your hit points in this game are also like your currency or your fuel to activate and trigger various attacks and maneuvers. But here is where it's important to roleplay. The bosses, the enemies, as a game master, when you are playing the role of the bosses and enemies, you have to go all out so that the players realize that if they remain passive, if they remain without spending position, you're going to destroy them immediately. They are going to feel forced to spend that position in order to finish the enemy as quickly as possible. And I think that that is actually a good representation. I wonder who mentioned that to them. Not the best representation, but a decent enough representation of how in Dark Souls, if you become too passive, too defensive, you're going to run out of your Estus flask. You also have the Estus flask here. It helps you recover position. You're going to run out of stamina. If you keep on rolling and rolling and dodging and attacking, you run out of stamina. So, for what is worth, the position system is not that bad. I would say decent. It is decent. But like I said, a lot of people do not describe their actions. They do not play the role of their characters. They are all, I attack, roll a d20, I roll a d8, I attack too, roll a d20, I rolled a 15, roll damage. Let's see, Roger speaks. Dark Souls is supposed to be life, death, get smarter, try again. No adjustable rolls, bullshit. Yeah, like the thing about like I said, it's like an abstract way of trying to represent that you are dodging better, that you are attacking better. So it becomes a bit of a bidding game in which you want to bid position to see if your attacks are more effective or if you can get farther away from the enemy. The position choice is interesting. Yes, because now you need to think when it is worth it to preserve that position. Maybe you are, my position is a bit too low, and the cleric is just about to get to me. I'm going to take a chance and not spend position, right? Not spend position yet. But then the enemy only needed a few hits to die, and because you didn't spend position, you didn't kill the enemy, and the enemy hits you instead, and now you die. Those are the risks that you have to take. But maybe what is the other way? What if it's the other way around? You describe that you are very taking cover, fighting very cautiously, like defensive maneuvers and stuff, and the cleric arrives just in time and uses healing, and now you can use your position to enhance the damage that you deal. So that is interesting and very exciting. Like I said, perhaps not like the best representation of Dark Souls, but still workable, still effective, at least effective, and it gives opportunity for some strategies and tactics. And everything else is pretty much Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. All of the effects. You do have madness, which makes me think that it doesn't make too much sense with Dark Souls. In Dark Souls, you never suffer the effects of madness. I like this madness mechanic, but it has nothing to do with Dark Souls. You never face sanity damage in Dark Souls. You only get killed from attacks. Your character doesn't go insane. But you do have like madness. You have information on traps, step-by-step combat actions. When it comes to the spells, the weapons, they are a good. They are not the best representations of the spells and weapons, but all of the icons that you have seen for the weapons, pieces of armor, they are here. Look, here is a collection of armor suits with the stats from the game. And something that I also like is that all of the weapons and armor, they have abilities that you can power, that you can activate by spending position. So every single time you could get the most mundane thing. Like, let's see. Let me give you an example. You found a longsword, right? A longsword. Pretty normal, but it has the special ability or trait or power of spend one position to deal plus 2 damage on a successful attack. Spend one position to deal plus 2 damage on a successful attack. So now you are, woohoo, now I can boost my damage because of the position spent normally, standard action. But you can also use a special ability to increase the damage. And that's what I really like of these weapons. And I think they are pretty close to how they work in the game. For example, the Great Club, my weapon of choice, the one that I am using right now in Dark Souls 3, the Great Club. Oh, it's a bit dirty over here. Okay. Spend 2 position after a successful attack to unleash a war cry. Your opponent must make a difficulty check 15 wisdom saving throw or be stunned for the next turn. Now, this doesn't work exactly like the game, but As you have seen from me wielding the Great Club, sometimes I stun the enemies. You do have like the roar to enhance your damage, but you also stun your enemies when you hit them. So I think that this that they need to pass a check or they are stunned is a somewhat good representation of the club hitting them and stunning them. So that's something that they really like, the selection of weapons, talismans, spells, rings. Then you have advice on running a Dark Souls game, which is pure crap. Everything concerning Game Master advice here is pure absolute garbage. Let's go into running a Dark Souls game. In most tabletop role playing games, the Game Master's role is somewhere between an administrator of the rules and a facilitator of the players getting to be cool. No, no, no. In most tabletop RPGs, the Game Master is playing the role of the game world. You could say that he's an administrator of the rules, but do you really administer the rules? More like a referee, more like a facilitator of the players getting to be cool. The rule of cool. No, because that means that they are always trying to make them look cool. No, no, that is based on their description. If they do something cool, then they are cool, but you don't need to facilitate anything. Let's see, Roger speaks. Did they blow the entire budget on illustration and marketing? Because they definitely didn't spend much money on researching how to make the RPG like the source material. Aha, that's a good point. That is unfortunate, definitely, Josh, because right now, and they tell you about difficulty levels, about not making um making the game easier and presenting the adequate challenges, right? They already gave us a level 15 boss for first level characters. They already want to pit the players into an inescapable battle as first level characters against a level 15 opponent. I'm going to tell you my advice to run a Dark Souls tabletop RPG. Play as brutal as possible, and once the players die, make them sure that their ideas work to the maximum potential. Imagine this: you start playing the game, the session has started, and now you need to face like 8 encounters before the boss, right? 8 or 6 encounters. You go through all of those encounters, and, oh, fighting the encounters, navigating the hazards, solving the puzzles. Okay, they get to the boss, they get massacred. The boss turns them into ash. How fun! Now they get to do it all over again, go through all 6 or 8 encounters against the same enemies again. Okay, how do you solve this? How do you solve this? The players need to get creative with the encounters to solve them quickly. Was the first encounter a camp with a bunch of hollows? A camp with 8 hollows at camp. Look for a boulder, some ruins that are not stable, and try to drop them on top of the guys at the camp. Or if the players plan a very careful and sneaky approach to the point that they get absolute surprise, complete surprise upon the camp of hollows, let them kill several of those hollows in the first assault because they already know how to kill them. Like in Dark Souls, in the Dark Souls game, when you know how to approach an enemy from the back, oftentimes you can one shot the enemy, or even if you are not very good at attacking the enemy from behind, like me, that is, I'm getting that insta kill. You easily get 2 or 3 hits in, 2 or 3 hits in, and that usually ends the enemy. And that advice should be included in this Game Master section of the Dark Souls Tabletop RPG. No crap that, oh yeah, the difficulty and the Game Master facilitates you being cool. No, 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 as simple as that. The game is going to become very tedious if the players keep facing the same encounters over and over again as they get killed. Whenever they attempt any of their ideas, make it so that they are very efficient and they burn through those encounters in half the time when they first went through those encounters. And they don't include that advice. Or if they want to avoid those encounters altogether, right, they could skirt around. Instead of going through that camp section that I mentioned, find an alternative way. This is not a video game. This is a tabletop RPG. If there are trees in Dark Souls, you see many trees and structures that you cannot climb because you cannot climb on, except ladders in the Dark Souls tabletop RPGs. This is a tabletop RPG, so now they can climb the trees and the fallen structures and avoid many of those encounters. Arrive to the place where they where they left their souls. Applying my homebrew rule of actually doing it like Dark Souls, obtaining your souls when you get to the place where you died. And the players will have fun. You know what? Because they will have fun planning how to avoid those encounters or breezing through those encounters. Josh says they had really great advice, but forgot to put it in the book. Another few missing pages, lol. And a big warning on my part: do not get Tome of Journeys. I already told this for the before, but I see that now we have 15 people watching this video. Do not get Tome of Journeys yet. This is the latest book released for the Dark Souls tabletop RPG. Do not buy it because not only is it riddled with typos and inconsistencies, there is an entire chapter missing. An entire chapter missing. You can purchase it and then get into contact with Steam Forged Games and wait who knows how many weeks for them to send you the book with the missing chapter. So sad that they had all they needed at their fingertips and opted to throw the unnecessary nonsense into the mix. We live in times when people with those huge budgets are absolute morons, complete morons. Again, what sorts of deals do they have? What sorts of connections does Steam Forged Games have to get their hands on Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Dark Souls, RuneScape? And in every single one of those intellectual properties, the board games and the role playing games, they mess it up. Continue. Let's continue. Then we have one of my favorite parts, the world of Lothric. The world of Lothric. This section is a delight for fans of Dark Souls, specifically Dark Souls 3. Sadly, no Dark Souls 1 and no Dark Souls 2. And why is that? Because they wanted to sell that as a separate book, the Tome of Journeys, that actually includes information on Dark Souls 1 and 2. Mostly Dark Souls 1, as I understand it. They could have cut all the crap about the role playing being storytelling and facilitate the players being cool and so much crap that they could have cut even some illustrations and they could have easily fit lots of information of Dark Souls 1 and 2. But this is the same company that wants you to buy the Pyromancer twice if you buy the two different board games, the one with Nita on the cover and the Sunless City uh, board game. Roger says, "Hell, at this point, I wouldn't trust that company with Stardew Valley as an IP because they will do the same thing." Mhm, 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 mhm. Indeed. Luckily, there is already a Stardew Valley board game. They say it's pretty good. They say that after a few plays, it becomes repetitive, but if you want to pay for the board game as a collectible, I think it's worth it. I've seen the playthroughs, the explanations. Looks good. But in this chapter, you have details on all of the major sites of Dark Souls 3. You have details on the Cemetery of Ash, the starting area, the Firelink Shrine, the Undead Settlement. But as I said, take into consideration that you shouldn't play this Dark Souls tabletop RPG similar to the video game in terms of stage order, more or less. Because in order to get to the Firelink Shrine, you need to kill Judex Gundyr. Judex Gundyr in this tabletop RPG is challenge rating 9. You have first level characters, which means that they will need to be around level 6, perhaps even 5, maybe depending on the items that they find between levels 5 or 6 to even attempt to defeat Judex Gundyr. So the starting area, the main adventure hub for Dark Souls, the Firelink Shrine, you cannot access it until you are about one third into your adventuring career. One third or one fourth, no, one third more or less, depending. It really shows that what Roger says is true. They didn't make it past Judex Gundyr. The designers of this game didn't make it past the first boss of Dark Souls 3. Otherwise, they would have known that the boss is not difficulty 9 and that the Firelink Shrine needs to be accessible. If you want to continue like the theme of Dark Souls, almost at the very start, it's going to be too much trouble for you to modify Gundyr. I would recommend that instead you ignore the Dark Souls lore and you handle the Firelink, or how you say, structure, the Dark Souls structure, and use the Firelink Shrine as an area much later in the campaign. But yeah, you have the Undead Settlement, the Cathedral of the Deep, the Road of Sacrifices. It's all here. Then we have the Monsters and Antagonists chapter. Monsters and Antagonists chapter with beautiful illustrations. Not all of the monsters have illustrations, sadly. I would say that less than half of them, which a lot of people are not going to like because not everybody has played Dark Souls. That's something to consider. A good tabletop role playing game can be played by anyone. This is a standalone product. You don't need anything else. This is a standalone product. So, being cities, you shouldn't need to play Dark Souls. Maybe somebody sucks at the game. He doesn't want to play Dark Souls. Oh, Dark Souls, no, that's too much of a pain. No, I'm not really into video games, but I love tabletop RPGs and I like the Dark Souls theme from what I have seen. Well, now you don't know how the monsters look, and the descriptions are not satisfactory. For example, let's say, such beautiful art in such a haphazard made RPG breaks my heart. hmm hmm Because, as we will see in a few moments, it is a prerequisite that not only do you need to play Dark Souls to understand the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, you also need, we will see that potentially, at the very least, look up information concerning Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition when it comes to the sizes. And why is that? Well, let's go to the descriptions first. Mm, 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 mm. Let's take a look at some of the descriptions. Harpa Demon. Its two great swords held almost casually, its goat head held horrifyingly still, appraising any who dare stand before it or against it. And then they start talking about bravery and being foolish, and the creature is so deadly, but the physical description of the creature is pretty lackluster because, like a humanoid with a goat head. Yeah, in real life, if you find a humanoid with a goat head, it's going to be a bit disturbing, right? But these are capable seasoned adventurers, and this is a game. And in Dark Souls, the monsters have a very unique aesthetic to them. Take a look, for example, at these at the Stone Knights. The Stone Knights. Unlike your typical iron or metal golem in other tabletop RPGs, the Stone Knights, they have that mystery to them. There are plants growing all over them. There is decay. There is decay and degeneration. And all of the Dark Souls monsters have that aspect to them, that aesthetics, that aesthetic, that flavor. So some of these descriptions for someone that has never seen a Capra demon, it's not going to be worth it. They're going to say that so it's basically like a humanoid with a goat head instead of describing like the skin of the Capra demon looks to be in a perpetual state of decay. Like those sorts of descriptions. And then the game master has a better idea. And so when it comes to descriptions, if I saw a guy with a goat head and a humanoid body, my soul would leave my body immediately. So yeah, many of these descriptions, they just give you like the basics, and you have to like imagine the rest. For someone that has never played Dark Souls or that is not very familiar with the Dark Souls aesthetic, it's going to feel like your typical Dungeons and Dragons session unless you have those details. For example, take a look at this: the Batwing Demon. Spindly creatures, wings drawn up behind backs through which the nodules. Okay, spindly creatures, wings drawn up behind backs through which the nodules of a spine bulge. These demons are renowned for their callousness. Thankfully, you have an illustration to further elaborate on the head resembling exposed brain lobes with a hooked nose and teeth that are constantly showing sickening gums as the lips are completely pulled back, right? So those are the sorts of descriptions that express the Dark Souls aesthetics, the flavor of Dark Souls. But the descriptions are not like that here. Thankfully, like I said, you have some illustrations for creatures such as that bat-winged demon. Josh says, that seems to be a common issue anymore. I understand art costs, but at the very least, have a sketch of every monster in your book, unless it is just the counterpart to existing animals. And I have many tabletop RPG books that have no illustrations. Some of them have no illustrations whatsoever, but they give you those good descriptions. And now, as a game master, you have that description that gives the flavor of the game world. And here you do not have that. That illustration gave H.R. Geiger vibes. And most of the monsters, not all of them, but most of the monsters are copy paste versions of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition monsters. You would expect that from Artorias the Abyss Walker, they would have unique stats and features. unique, completely unique. No, but no, these lazy bastards. Let me look at say their names again. Richard August and Matt Hart and Alan Barr, who is the editor, development editing Alan Barr, the Tiny Dungeons guy. You would think that they would check. Can't you be a bit original and come up with original stats for one of the most famous Dark Souls monsters? I would be. That's not my job, right? But if I decided to work, to actually get paid for that, I would be delighted to come up with the stats for Artorias, like, oh, Artorias, imagine all the things that you can do. But that would require actual work. That would require you fighting Artorias, watching Artorias videos, thinking of blah, 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 etc. And then coming up with those original stats, powers, abilities, etc. But that's part of the game. If you are working, you shouldn't just copy and paste stats and powers and abilities from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Apparently, he is dropping the ball on catching errors. Nice one, Alan. Guess we will just send out new books to everyone. Exactly, exactly. And that's sad because all of the fans pointed this out. And when they started to send out books, it's not because they actually felt bad about delivering a lackluster experience. It's because they got cut. They got cut in the act. If not, they wouldn't have sent books to anybody. I am sure. Absolutely certain. And after the mystery section, that is the end of the book. But then we have the other book that is worth getting if you are getting into, you still want to get into the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, the Tome of Strange Beings. This contains monsters from Dark Souls 1 and 2, the beloved monsters such as, where is he? Well, Ornstein and Smog, the most famous, one of the most famous battles of Dark Souls 1 against that duo, that deadly duo. You have stats for Gwyn, Lord of Cinder. You also have stats for Dark Souls 3 specific monsters, such as the Lycanthropy. Do you remember how they were kicking my ass? Those of you, including Josh and Roger, these guys that were giving me a bit of trouble in the forest, you have you have lore on some of the creatures, but not enough lore. So if you want more lore, you definitely need to dive into some Dark Souls videos and or play the game. Still, there are some interesting tidbits of lore. For example, like, oh, maybe you play Dark Souls a single run and you missed some details about crossbreed Priscilla, and you're going to find that information here. Or on the Dark Sun Gwendolyn, or Grave Lord Nito. It's here. Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, the last boss for Dark Souls 1. But as I have said, don't be too disappointed if you suddenly realize that you have the stats of the Red Dragon for Gwyn or something like that. You also have like some advice in this book on how to use the encounters, but it's pretty lackluster, like building encounters, considering the horrible challenge rating imbalances that I have mentioned. Hmm. Advice. Choose the right bad guys. Like we did, choosing a level 15 boss for first level characters in the starting scenario. Plan for the boss early. Describe, describe, describe. Advice for boss fights. Don't be cruel. Death is a learning experience. Let them be cool. Let the player characters be cool. Make the fight important. It looks like advice for your grandma. Yeah, and the sad thing from your grandma. The sad thing is, if your grandma played tabletop RPGs, maybe she will give like that advice, like remember to have fun. Remember to have fun or play the game following the rules. Wow, awesome tips. I would have never thought about that. What? Really? Oh, wow. So, what do I think? This is pretty much like a super fast review of, well, almost 2 hours of Dark Souls Tabletop RPG. What do I think about it? Despite the many bad things, I am actually looking forward to running it. Cruelty is Dark Souls Essentials. First hollow encounter mistakenly started as Tiamat. Exactly. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. There are like a few enemies that are pretty weak in Dark Souls that I remember looking up the stats and they were like level 5 or above monsters. But like I said, despite the many errors, if you are an experienced, not even a role player, if you are an experienced player, you can bypass, tweak, and modify many of the errors of the Dark Souls tabletop RPG. But that's the question. Are you willing to spend that time? In my case, roleplay solves everything. I can easily look at the first encounter, the first scenario with the 15 level combatant, and on the fly, I would modify the stats. Oh, the let me look it up. The Iron Golem has 315 position. Imagining reducing 315 hit points with first level characters. Well, it turns out that now he only has a fourth of that, right? The armor class is 21? No, no, no. Now it's 14. So roleplay solves everything. Play the role of the monster. If you see those moronic like I said, don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong. The players are free to wander into unbalanced encounters. They could go and stand toe to toe with a level 15 enemy and decide to run. Perfect. They decide to run. Survival. First thing, right? Priority, survival, survive. But in that scenario, they make it obligatory. It is a must for you to defeat a level 15 boss with first level characters. Otherwise, because of the way that they are trapped in that situation. Yeah. So, final verdict, if you like Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and you don't mind tweaking and modifying some things, even on the fly, definitely get the Dark Souls tabletop RPG, the core book. The core book. It's usually on sale. I wonder why it's usually on sale. Definitely, I got it like it was like 700 pesos. That's the equivalent when I got it. The equivalent of 700 pesos. Almost less than $50. Less than $50. Considering the quality and the art and all of that, 700, like it like no less than let me do the conversion. Mm, mm, mm. No, it's much less, excuse me. What was I thinking? $34. $34. I got it for $34. So it wasn't too bad because like I said, I like the section of the adventure sites. My rating for Dark Souls RPG, 5 face palms out of 5. Uh, if you get it on sale, I don't think you will regret it because of the art, the lore, the material that is actually useful. When it comes to, but that's the other thing that I forgot to mention. I almost forgot it. That is also very important. When it comes to the size, medium monsters, gargantuan monsters, colossal monsters, they tell you the size in the grid. This monster occupies a single square in the grid. This monster occupies 4 squares in the grid. But they never tell you how tall they are. They never tell you how tall they are. So someone has never seen one of the big monsters from Dark Souls, and he knows that the monster occupies 4 squares or something. But how tall is that? And that is because in the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition manual, the handbook, player's handbook, they have drawings of the sizes. It's actually here in the Game Master screen, if I remember correctly. Uh-huh. The sizes. Let me get closer. Now you know how big, how large the enemies are. And they did not include that in the core book of Dark Souls. So now somebody that has just started to play tabletop RPGs and wanted to play the Dark Souls role-playing game, he has no idea how tall the monsters are, and he needs to go online or purchase the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, the handbook. So yeah, when it comes to the Game Master screen, I got it on sale as well. So it's good. It's not good that they use that one panel for the table that you're not going to be using almost. You're rarely going to use that table for the characters to revive. They're not going to be dying all the time, only in very particular moments, because this is a tabletop RPG. It is considerably easier to control a character in a tabletop RPG when compared to a video game, where you rely on your reaction and your practice, your timing, your knowledge of the frames. The scenario, like I said, I like the concept for the main villain of the scenario, but it is horribly balanced because they are forcing the player characters to defeat an enemy that is pretty much unbeatable at that level. And when it comes to the Tome of Strange Beings, I also recommend it, but get it also on sale. It is very thin compared to the core book, and I have seen the Tome of Strange Beings sold a lot more expensive at a higher price when compared to the core book, even though this is only 120 pages and the other one is more than 300 pages, 380. Basically, that whole RPG is great for collecting, not so much for playing. That's another good point. If you're a collector, you will like it as a collector's piece. Almost 380 pages, 370, 77. And yet, this is usually cheaper than this tome. That is not even half that. So I hope with these details, you have enough information to make an informed decision. I hope that you enjoyed it, Josh, because you were asking about details concerning Dark Souls. Now you know exactly what is in the game. If you like it as a collector's item, definitely get it. If you don't mind tweaking and modifying many of the things in the book, and like I said, you don't need to write documents. You can do it on the fly. You can modify the armor class or the hit points. I appreciate the thorough walkthrough. Excellent. I'm glad it's helpful. Mm, and do not get the Tome of Strange Journeys or Strange Lands or no, the Tome of Journeys. Do not get the Tome of Journeys. No, 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 no. Until at least 4 or 6 months pass so that they fix the missing chapter. They add the missing chapter and they fix the errors, typos, etc. Very informative, not all good or bad. Mhm. Because, like I said, I still like it. I want to play it one of these days, and I want to play it the way that it is meant to be played. But thank you all. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Roger, for being here. This is going to be the last live stream for today. But tomorrow I will continue with video game live streams. Let's say Roger says, yeah, at least we know what not to invest in. Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I got it on sale. Every single thing I got on sale. I saw it and oof, no, no, oof. So $34. And okay. So thank you to everyone. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the super thanks button. Like, subscribe, take a look at the information in the description, the pinned comment. This has been your host, Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. And Josh says, thank you for the video. Have a great day, everyone. Exactly. And remember, thank you, Roger. And remember, see you tomorrow, Roger. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you all and have a great rest of your evening, day, wherever you are. See you later.